Yeah, I think I've always said it's either something or it's nothing. If it's embraced as an institutional asset, if it's legitimized as an asset, then it's not going to zero. And if it's not going to zero, it's going to a million. And I think the short answer to your question is education. And with education comes adoption. And at this point, you just have 95% of the world that still doesn't quite understand what it is. And that means, I mean, the way Bitcoin marches from 100,000 to 13 million, and by that's for your listeners, you're referring to my long-term forecast. I gave that forecast in Nashville in July of this year. And it's based upon the Bitcoin 24 model. So the Bitcoin 24 model is an open source macro model of Bitcoin adoption and macroeconomic development over the next 21 years. Anybody can go to Google and they can Google Bitcoin 24. They'll find it on GitHub. You can download that model. You can plug in all your own assumptions and you can check what we thought. But my forecast is Bitcoin, in essence, it's growing 60% a year for quite a while now. And I'm forecasting it will decelerate to 20% a year over 21 years. But that means on average, it grows about 29% a year, ARR. And that 29% a year for 21 years gets you to 13 million a coin. And so what do I expect to happen? Well, I expect lots of high net worth individuals that previously thought it's too risky or it's too scary. They see it legitimized by BlackRock. Now, BlackRock is giving guidance that you could have 2% of your portfolio in Bitcoin. And they're seeing the ETFs like IBIT. And they're noticing that these are the most successful ETFs in the history of the world. And BlackRock has got the most successful ETF ever launched. And now they're seeing the world's largest money manager, BlackRock, with more than $11 trillion of money managed. They're seeing them publish scholarly, thoughtful, responsible white papers on portfolio allocation. And instead of the 60-40 model, with 60% equity and 40% bonds. Now you've got 2% that they're saying you might want to put into a crypto asset like Bitcoin. So I think that you've got that group of people that are finding it. I also think you've got institutional investors that are moving into Bitcoin more frequently now. A lot of them are big investors in MicroStrategy. A lot of them trade MicroStrategy options. And they have MicroStrategy has been the most successful stock in the S&P index. We're not in the S&P, but we're more successful than all 500 S&P companies for the past 4 years. I think this year too.
MicroStrategy, helmed by Bitcoin enthusiast Michael Saylor, has once again stirred the crypto cauldron, bridging the gap between digital currencies and futuristic dreams by bringing attention to how Bitcoin will surge all the way to Mars. Saylor's evocative declaration suggests a journey to Mars, possibly in tandem with technological maverick Elon Musk. But it isn't just about sci-fi spectacles. Alongside the cosmic visuals, MicroStrategy is making groundbreaking financial strides, even as Bitcoin prices skyrocket. Welcome back, everyone, to Investocracy Crypto.
So we're getting the attention of mainstream investors. And that's bringing a set of new investors to the asset class because when they buy our stock, we buy Bitcoin with it. I think the third driver is a bunch of Bitcoin standard companies. A lot of companies are recapitalizing their balance sheets on Bitcoin. MicroStrategy was the first, but Mara has done it, M-A-R-A, and Riot just announced they're doing it, R-I-O-T. And the most successful company in the Japanese stock market this year is Metaplanet, and they just did it. And Similar Scientific just did it, and they tripled their stock in very short order. So you've got like a half dozen companies that are recapitalizing to the Bitcoin standard, but you've got 60 companies that have Bitcoin, and there's a lot of companies that are getting more heavily involved. I think recently Hut 8 announced, Hut, H-U-T, and then Rumble, R-U-M. And so a bunch of public companies that are kind of, they're innovators, and they've got a fairly open mind, and they're flexible. And the really important thing about that, Tom, is when a public company adopts Bitcoin, they start sweeping their cash flows into it. But then after that, they may start issuing equity. And then after that, they can borrow money. So Riot just this week issued a $500 million convertible bond, and then they bought Bitcoin with it. And Mara—
Is this Riot Games?
No, Riot Bitcoin mining. R-I-O-T, Riot. And so Mara did the same thing. They did a $1 billion convertible bond deal, and they bought Bitcoin, and then they did another $850 million bond deal 2 weeks later. And MicroStrategy, when we announced we were going to pursue a Bitcoin treasury company model, we announced that October 30th of just this year, and we've raised something in the range of $15 billion in the last 6 weeks. And so you're talking about large sums of money that are flowing. I mean, much larger sums. It took us 30 years to accumulate $500 million in order to buy Bitcoin in 2020. It took us 4 years to accumulate $10 billion. And we bought Bitcoin over the next 4 years. But then it took us like 4 weeks or 5 weeks to accumulate the next 15 billion. So you would check off that box, which is company adoption. And then after that, you've got like institutional adoption, the endowments and the pension funds. There's now pension funds that are starting to allocate to Bitcoin, and there'll be big university endowments and 501c3s and insurance companies. And so that's another driver.
Michael Saylor emerges as a calm amidst the storm. His recent post on X, formerly known as Twitter, showcased an AI-generated image with Saylor envisioning himself on Mars. Saylor's interstellar storytelling aligns with MicroStrategy's terrestrial ambitions. Data suggests a curious correlation between such visionary narratives and tangible market actions. For instance, Bitcoin, known for its highs and lows, recently soared past the $106,800 mark in an adrenaline-fueled surge. This wasn't just another roller coaster ride of Bitcoin's wild past week, where it dipped over 5% at one point. No, it was a reaction to several key events taking place through the U.S. government.
How big of a victory was when you talk about the red wave when Trump won? And how different would the climate be today? Bitcoin right now is at what, 90, 91,000, 92,000, 89,000, whatever the number is. How 90,000, 711, how different would it have been if it was a Kamala victory?
I think if you look at the difference between a red wave and a blue wave, I'll take the blue wave first. If it had been a blue wave, Bitcoin would grind up plus 20, 25%, 30% against resistance, and the rest of the digital assets industry would degrade down 20%.
Okay.
Like every digital exchanges, digital tokens, digital securities, digital currencies, they would degrade and Bitcoin would grind up. And there would be that tension that you see right now for the last 4 years where Bitcoin is grudgingly accepted, under protest, and the other ones are being attacked all the time. But I think the red wave was the headwind becomes a tailwind. Bitcoin surges up, not plus 20, but maybe plus 50 or plus 60. I think, we go from that to this. And then the digital assets industry goes from degrading down to surging up. It goes from minus 20 to now it's coming back. Now, there's a little bit more uncertainty with digital assets because we got to wait till next year to figure out what the framework will be. But basically, the polarity got switched from negatively polarized on the entire digital assets economy to positive with the red wave. And I think you just got to have a much more bullish view toward growth and prosperity and innovation in the next 4 years than you would have had in a blue wave.
Okay, so what do you think is going to be by the end of Trump, give or take? High, low. If you're saying in 21 years it'll be 13 million, You're saying it'll be at 100,000 by the end of the year. What do you think it'll be by 2028?
You know, I got a Bitcoin 24 model that's actually published on GitHub. You can Google it, and if you Google it, you can download it, and then you can crank in your assumptions and see our base case assumptions. And I think my base case assumptions, and it actually spits out the price of Bitcoin every year. And to tell you the truth, I don't have off the top of my head, I don't have the exact number for the end of 28. But I could tell you basically the model says it's like 55 growth to 52 to 50% a year.
Got it.
So it's like 50 to 45%
totally
growth a year
Got
for
it.
the next 4 years. And that's like doubling every 18 months or less than 18 months in that range.
I got it.
Despite the thrills and spills, MicroStrategy achieved a substantial gain, a hefty 6,120 bitcoins for their shareholders. That's a 1.36% yield against a backdrop of a fluctuant market, a testament to their rigorous investment strategy. With exchange rates hovering near $105,000, this translates to a staggering $642.6 million. And in a bold move cementing their faith in Bitcoin's potential, another $1.1 billion worth of BTC was added to their coffers. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
Okay,
How do you sell them? If you're talking to me on the phone, I'm like, Michael, you want me to do what?
You mean my customers or my investors?
Customers.
Yeah, well, the customers of the software company, they're getting MicroStrategy software. They're delighted with the software.
Let me rephrase that. Investors.
Investors.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the investors are investing in the company because they want more Bitcoin. They don't want Bitcoin performance. They want to invest in a stock that can outperform Bitcoin. So we are a Bitcoin treasury company. And the way to think about us is if you just want straight Bitcoin exposure, you buy IBIT from BlackRock. And that's like overnight deposits. I'm buying, $1 million of Bitcoin, and if Bitcoin goes up 50% a year, I'm getting 50% a year, and I'm getting the downside and the upside. MicroStrategy will sell you bonds. We're basically the leading issuer of Bitcoin-backed bonds in the market. So what if you wanted the upside of Bitcoin without the downside? I want like 75% of the upside, but no downside, or something like that. You buy the convertible bond. And so a lot of investors of ours are bond holders, and what they want is low risk, low volatility Bitcoin. And you can do that through those fixed income instruments.
As Bitcoin's price eclipses former glories and the company's accumulation strategy bears fruit, the future looks promising. Significant market forecasts indicate not just stabilization, but remarkable growth potential for Bitcoin, further anchored by its adoption in institutional strategies akin to national reserves. So, where do you, the ambitious investor, stand in this narrative? Are you ready to join the journey, be it to Mars or the new digital financial frontier? Share your thoughts. And finally, if you would like to know more about cryptocurrencies or specifically Bitcoin, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.